Hi, are you a skeptic? Okay, so obviously this word skepticism is being thrown around every which way, and everyone says it's important to be a skeptic, and I tend to agree with that. So let's look at the definition of skepticism, okay? Skepticism, a questioning attitude. Asks why, how, where, when, what, etc., etc. It allows it to be true, or it allows it to not be true. It comes in with I will accept either one after I have done the research, after I have had my own experiences and looked at the evidence. Then I will make up my own mind. And even when I have made up my mind and drawn a conclusion, that conclusion is not set in stone. It is changeable based upon new evidence and new experiences. It is a state of learning. Skepticism is a state of open-mindedness and willingness to learn. Now let's look at cynicism, okay? Because unfortunately, in my experience, most people who call themselves skeptics are not skeptics. They fall more in the category of cynicism. Cynicism, bitterness, distrustful of people in general, questions them and questions them with the expectation of an ulterior motive. It's basically the refusal to allow for integrity and sincerity as a motive in people's actions. I'm particularly using this because a lot of people question spiritual teachers and either or dismiss them, put them down, or they just accept them without questioning, which is credulity and just as dangerous as cynicism. Okay, credulity is basically gullibility. It's a tendency to believe unlikely propositions that are unsupported by evidence or personal experience. Okay, so you don't want to be credulous, which is gullibility, and you don't want to be a cynic, which is bitter and distrustful, and you've already expect negative things all the time. So we want to fall in that. At least I recommend it personally. It seems to be the most healthy option for us to fall into that skepticism in the middle, where we don't land on either extreme. With credulity and versus cynicism. I'm just making this video because I'm kind of fed up with people who call themselves skeptics and yet they are actually cynics. My question, my invitation, and my hope is that we will actually be true skeptics, as in I will keep an open mind. I will actually do the research thoroughly before I draw a conclusion as to whether it's accurate or inaccurate. And most people, if you're not going to do the work and do the research, then don't draw a conclusion and assume that it's fact and that it is the way that it is, especially not when it comes to the point where you're going to call someone else crazy, dismiss them, have a snotty attitude towards them when you haven't even done the research. If you don't have an interest in a topic, that's perfectly okay. Then keep an open mind. That's what the true skeptic does. If you're not going to do the research yourself, then you don't draw a set in stone conclusion. You don't assume that it's wrong, or you don't assume that it's right. If you assume that it's wrong, then you've jumped to cynicism, and if you assume that it's right, then you've jumped to credulity, and you have gone into an unhealthy territory and risky territory, especially if you will treat others in an unhealthy way, an unfair way, without actually considering it. I'm just going to throw out two particular topics that come to mind for me when it's really important to be a skeptic. Metaphysics, paranormal, psychic abilities, out-of-body experiences. Does the soul exist? Does reincarnation, is that real? Those are topics that many people are. Here's another one. Aliens. Extraterrestrial life. Does it exist? Here's another topic for you. The flat earth theory. Is the earth really flat? Or is the earth actually a globe? Okay, so all three of those topics are super important topics that many people, they're very triggering topics. It's very understandable to be triggered by them. However, have you actually done the research on any of those topics to the point where you have actually, with an open mind, coming in with this may be wrong or this may be right, or there may be fat bits of truth to it, but since we don't really know, we're going to actually dig into it and try to separate the grain from the chaff, shall we say, the truth from the untruths. So any one of these topics, I see so many people, like when it comes to something like extra believing in, so you say you have a non-believer, okay, and they don't think that extraterrestrial life is even a thing, okay? They've already made up their mind, and the question is, have they actually researched it? Are they true skeptics or are they cynics? Now, if they come in saying, oh, that person's an idiot, he believes in aliens, what's wrong with them, whatever, they're just not cases, they're the cynic. Because they haven't even researched it. Now, if they have, they actually done the research. Now, if they actually have done the research, they're not going to put that person down. They're not going to belittle them or scorn them because they believe in it. They will say they will be able to give you the reasons why they believe that it is not true. And they'll be able to list reasons and why of them having done their own research. And then you have the believer, so to say, say maybe the person believes in aliens and they haven't actually done the research. That's just as dangerous, and that would fall into credulity. Credulity being a tendency to believe in unlikely propositions based on insufficient, despite unsupporting evidence, the lack of evidence. So I think it's incredibly dangerous to jump to saying something like ETs do exist. And it's just as dangerous to jump to saying ETs don't exist and saying that without actually doing the research, without actually doing experiential. And there's plenty of stuff out there that you can, if you're interested, dive into and find some really interesting stuff that can sway you in one direction or the other. I, of course, encourage anyone to actually do the research. But again, here's the thing. If you don't have the interest in the topic, then don't draw a conclusion. Otherwise, you are a cynic. That's just my spill on the topic, okay? Same thing goes for something like spirituality, extrasensory abilities, psychic phenomena, out-of-body experiences, reincarnation, something that falls into paranormal, ghosts, entities, thought forms, whatever you want to call them. Have you had experiences with this yourself? If yes, then don't just assume that it is in fact true. Go out and research it. Seek to have more experiences. Question. Not question to destroy, not question to accept, but just question to understand with an open mind. Just better understand it. You never know what you're going to learn by approaching things with an open mind and a desire to learn more. If you are approaching the topic of you've already come in deciding that you don't believe in extrasensory abilities or psychic phenomena or anything like that, then you've fallen into cynicism. And like we've already covered, you're on dangerous territory. Not only that, but you've shut it down. You're not going to be able to learn anything new. And that's kind of the end. You've basically made up your mind and you can't go any further now. So I think it's really important to be skeptical. And something like the flat earth theory, I see a lot of people like on both sides of the argument. They just go head to head, they're both determined that they're right. And I'm like, guys, show some respect to each other, okay? If you put yourself in if you actually look and start digging into it, you can kind of understand why each side has their opinion and believes what they do. Again, this is about being skeptical, not about being cynical or about being credulous, okay? So basically, what is my takeaway on this topic? My takeaway on this topic is don't just assume stuff. Okay, for example, I've got this acquaintance, okay, and okay, so I was exploring the spiritual teacher Teal Swan's material, okay, because I have a huge amount of respect for her. She's speaking about topics that I have, and basically sharing my views on the topics of things that I have been thinking about for about a decade. I finally found someone that's actually putting it out there the way and coming to the same conclusions that I came to on my own as well. So it's really, I really like seeing someone putting herself out there so bravely and authentically as much as she is. Now, I know there are people who don't agree with that, and that's fine. However, have you actually researched it? Have you actually looked into it? Do you actually know anything about her? Or are you just drawing your own conclusions for things based upon what other people have done in the past, other spiritual teachers? Unfortunately, this acquaintance of mine jumped straight to cynicism and basically came in with the attitude of, oh, it's all bullshit and it's all scam, and they have not done the research. They have not even looked into it. Now, if they came to that conclusion after doing the research, then I would actually be able to like have some respect for them in that sense, and actually be able to be like, okay, give me your reasons why. I'll listen. I'll keep an open mind. I, of course, have looked into it myself and made up my own mind about things based upon my experiences and the evidence that I've found, and talking to people that know her, interacting with people that have directly interacted with her, looking at her, letting her material speak for itself, using her techniques and seeing how they work for me, if they worked for me, and using all that information to make my own conclusion about it. Skepticism. But this individual, unfortunately, had already made up his mind without any supporting evidence. And at that point, he was basically falling straight into cynicism, and his mind was closed, and that was the end of it. We couldn't discuss the topic any further. So, takeaways. Please, please, please remember to be a true skeptic. Don't be a cynic. Don't just assume that it's wrong. Don't just assume that there's an ulterior motive. Of course, yes, people have ulterior motives sometimes, but just look into it and see what you can find for true evidence, and not only look at the hard cold facts about it, but also go into seeing how it feels to you. Let yourself have some experiences with it, and based upon those experiences with it, you can draw a better conclusion, a more accurate conclusion, a more healthy conclusion for you. That's really the most important thing in the end, is this, whatever it is, whether it's a flat earth theory or extraterrestrial beings or a teal swan or paranormals, extrasensory abilities, whatever it is, please, please, please keep an open mind and do the research and see what you find. And hey, even if you come out at an opposite conclusion to someone else, please have some respect for them. If you can see that they are genuinely questioning and looking into it and asking why, because you never know. You may come to more information. You may come to new evidence or a new experience that changes your mind, or they may change their mind and join you. But at least you have an open dialogue and the sense of brotherhood and sisterhood that makes life on Earth more